BloodFest. This is the spoiler review video that I'm going to be doing, and by review I mean I'm just going to talk about the movie and what I thought of it without fear of giving anything away, because you knew what you were getting yourself into. I'll be honest, I don't even really know where to begin with this video because the spoiler-free one stole all the structure. So let's just begin with the basics. Let's talk about the characters and their fate. I first want to talk about Krill. Going into this movie, I expected the main three to survive, and when he was bit by the vampire, I thought, oh, he's just gonna get turned into a vampire, you know? He was bit, and that's the rule of vampires. But then I realized, oh, these aren't actually vampires, they're just crazy people hired and brainwashed to do this. So that thought was out of the window. But then I thought more about it, and I realized it wasn't even that deadly of a bite. She didn't rip his neck open. She got a healthy mouthful of blood, but when you think about it, it's not actually that much blood. The average mouth can carry like, what, 4 ounces or something like that? That's like a fourth of what people donate willingly, so I think logically, Krill should have actually survived. I'll jump to Barbara's character real quick, Ashley, because I'm sure a lot of people care. This was Barbara's first big role in a motion picture, and boy, did I hate her character. I love Barbara, salt of the earth, but Jesus Christ, Ashley was so annoying. Her death, while I was happy about, did have one of the funnier jokes in the movie. When Lenjamin, who died earlier, kills her, but then takes a hit from his vape that he was complaining was broken. That did legitimately get a laugh out of me, while also getting rid of Ashley, which was a big plus. But what about her performance? How did Barbara do? Here's the thing, and this is a very me thing. When it comes to the Rooster Teeth personalities being put on the big screen with a script and the whole shebang, I have a hard time thinking that their acting is anything above average. The exact same thing happened with Laser Team. Despite Bernie playing Church for over a decade and Barbara playing Yang, despite how similar I do believe voice acting and acting to be, it just doesn't work for me. It's not bad. It's not a bad performance from Barbara. But it's that suspension of disbelief that I can't force myself to have, and I think it almost always negatively affects the personalities. I mean, take for example Adam. He plays the arborist. To a new viewer, they don't know who he is, and the role isn't affected, especially because he has no lines. But I, as a fan, look at him and am not intimidated. Yeah, he's got the beard and the huge size difference, but to anyone who has ever watched one of his and Joel's how-to videos, know exactly how he is with horror.
Oh god, the crying is horrible.
How do you open the door?
So once again, it's that suspension of disbelief that is hard for me to completely get rid of. Dax. I mean, I still don't have much to say about him, even in this spoiler video. He was there, he was the main protagonist, never really rubbed me the wrong way at any point. The only problem I could possibly think of that involved Dax was the fact that only he was apparently aware of the horror cliches that existed. You know, this entire festival that is designed for horror fans, and only this one kid knew what to do and what not to do. Even his friends who were also excited about this horror festival didn't seem to know much about horror. I know that this isn't exactly a gripe with Dax, but it's the only thing that I could think of. But Sam, oh my god, Sam. Aside from being the voice of Asami from The Legend of Korra, which already gives me a reason to love her going into this movie, when she was turned into that raging monster, I was legitimately concerned for her character. I was hoping that she wouldn't die. The part of me that weirdly made me the most worrisome was when she vomited all that green goo onto Dax. I mean, even knowing that she survived the whole thing, that amount of liquid being expelled from her body should have probably killed her, and that's when I got nervous watching it the first time. If it weren't for the clowns in this movie, Sam might have been the scariest monster of them all. I mean, just look at her dilated eyes. It's somehow attractive and terrifying. The monsters of this movie, I'll be honest and say, I don't completely get. I haven't watched the movie that many times, and I get that they tried to explain it saying that they were patients, already crazed and psychologically damaged humans that could be brainwashed, plus some people that they hired. But I don't feel as though that explains everything. The zombies, I'm not even sure if they were alive or dead. I get that they were being controlled, but how did they survive in the ground with no oxygen if they were alive? And if they were dead, then what the fuck? The vampires, I think, are the easiest to explain. I would assume they're just hot girls with sharpened teeth. But when it comes to the dolls, that becomes weird. Rooster Teeth released a small short dedicated to the lead doll, Mr. Leadfoot. This short is completely and tonally different to this movie, and it shows that the doll really is haunted. So this park isn't just functioning on actors and crazy people, there's some real paranormal shit going on. But the thing with Mr. Leadfoot is that they treated him as though he were Billy from the Saw movies, just a puppet while the real mastermind is somewhere else. But if this doll really is haunted, then what the fuck is he doing with these traps? That's not very ghost-like. That's not what he did to the guy, he drove him mad. I already talked about the arborist and how Adam doesn't scare me. The clowns were the real horror aesthetic, however. You could tell that these were just some crazy people. In fact, this held one of my favorite scenes in the movie. When the zombies broke out of their area and into the carnival, I was just like, oh hell yeah, shit's about to go down. The clashing of any two villains is always a personal favorite of mine. Heroes always tend to butt heads, but when antagonists throw down, you can bet that I want to see that. Then you had Jamie, who was really red the entire time. Except for the beginning, that was not her. She was just a small girl. But in the movie, upon the reveal, mainly towards the end, I was like, what the who is she? She's doing flips and using her chain spike with the accuracy of a SEAL team sniper. Also, her chain just goes on forever. I mean, from this height to get all the way down to the ground is too much. That is too much height. She never had any real sort of setup or anything to her. It was just revealed like, yeah, your sister's a psychopath who's been a secret ninja for the past decade of her life. What, you didn't see that coming? What are you, a stupid? Actually, now that I think about it, I should probably talk about the ending and reveal since I have yet to mention it once. So if you've not seen the movie and are watching this video for some reason, and have also been incapable of picking up on what happened, Dax's dad was behind the whole thing. He hated horror movies so much for getting his wife killed that in an attempt to stop getting them made forever, he organized an event to slaughter hundreds if not thousands of people. I mean, yeah, what else would you do? Talk to your kid? Pfft, what kind of lame parent does that? He also dies. He's killed, Jamie murders him because he's gonna blow up the entire festival. So the only survivors of the event are Dax, Sam, and Jamie. Everyone else blows up from what I would say does not actually seem like that big of an explosion. Earlier in the movie, Dax said that there's 3 outcomes when it comes to horror. And this is off the top of my head, so I may be remembering this wrong. But I believe he said, 1 hero survives, no one survives, and he never got to the 3rd until the end where Sam acts as though this was a good ending, despite bearing witness to her friend being murdered as well as about a dozen other murders. In fact, I think the police may want to talk to you. Now, I don't believe the whole 3 outcomes thing. I would go as far to say that's not even a rule of horror that 3 outcomes are possible. The one that I feared would happen is the one where Dax becomes the murderer, like a Halloween situation. I mean, his dad and sister were already insane psychopaths, so to assume that Dax would be like one of them is a pretty justified fear, to be fair. So at the very least, there are 4 outcomes to potentially happen in horror. I'll be honest, I don't even know what type of ending we got. 2 survivors? I mean, technically there were 3. There's a lot of variables to account for in this whole 3 endings to a horror movie statement you made, Dax. I'm not gonna let this go so easy. Something I do want to praise this movie on is its special effects. Practical will almost always look better than CG, and the movie used a lot of practical. From its sets to its gore, a lot of this movie was practical. I can get using CG when it comes to shots that can't be attained, like a scenic shot. The only thing I wish were done differently were the kills that were CG. Let's be honest, it does not look good. It is better than those abominations that were in Laser Team, but especially for a horror film, practical should always be the way to go. So aside from this movie's attempt to shoot for the stars with some kills, they never should have tried CG. In my spoiler-free review, I said how the movie isn't really that scary. To be fair, that's a completely subjective opinion. The only times I rolled my eyes at this movie were whenever it did a jump scare. You know, a character is slowly creeping up, the music dies out to silence, nothing happens, and then nothing. To my memory, the movie did it twice, but I only remember one with the zombies. I know I can't get too upset at the movie for doing it because what horror movie hasn't? That type of jump scare in a horror movie has been compared to a laugh track in a sitcom. It's kinda just a thing that it does. When you look at it that way, it's completely forgivable, especially when it only does it like a handful of times. If you have not seen the movie, then oh boy did I just spoil every single fucking thing that happens, but you should still watch it. I know there's not a huge audience for this type of thing on YouTube. You probably aren't gonna see a whole lot of videos on it, and I believe the movie does actually deserve a bit of attention. It's a Halloween movie that I'll be watching every holiday.